The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Let us pray. Good and gracious one, we thank you for this day, a day filled with your presence and your promise to be with us. Shine your light and love, mercy and grace on all those gathered. Use us to be about your work of reconciliation and healing. Help us to bring justice and peace, love and forgiveness to our colleagues and communities, to our state and beyond. Empower these public servants to do the work they have been called to do. Give them wisdom and discernment for the decisions they face. As they come with diverse and varied voices and opinions, may they work together for the greater and common good and be one in the mission of caring for others and your precious creation. Bless them and grant them your peace. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Sarah Breckenridge, who is the Senior Executive Pastor at St. Andrew's Lutheran Church, Matamidi, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members, when the Chief Clerk calls the roll today, please state your name, your location, and that you are present. Members using the remote voting technology, please also press the green or yes button. The clerk will take the roll.
Acom.
Acom, Minnetonka, present.
Acom, Minnetonka, present. Agbaje.
Agbaje, Minneapolis, present.
Agbaje, Minneapolis, present. Ackland.
Ackland, St. Paul, present.
Ackland, St. Paul, present. Albright.
Albright, Prior Lake, present.
Albright, Prior Lake, present. Anderson.
Anderson, St. Paul, present.
Anderson, St. Paul, present. Backer.
Backer, Browns Valley, present.
Backer, Browns Valley, present. Bonner.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present.
Bonner, Maple Grove, present. Barr.
Barr, East Bethel, present.
Barr, East Bethel, present. Baker. Baker. Becker-Finn. Becker-Finn, St. Paul, present. Bennett.
Bennett, St. Paul, present.
Bennett, St. Paul, present. Berg.
Berg, St. Paul, present.
Berg, St. Paul, present. Bernardi.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present.
Bernardi, New Brighton, present. Bierman.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present.
Bierman, Apple Valley, present. Bliss.
Bliss, St. Paul, present.
Bliss, St. Paul, present. Bow.
Bo Chanhassen, present.
Bow, Chanhassen, present. Bolden.
Bolden, Rochester, present.
Bolden, Rochester, present. Burkle.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present.
Burkle, Skagen Township, present. Carlson. Carlson, St. Paul, present. Christensen.
Christensen, Stillwater, present.
Christensen, Stillwater, present. Daniels.
Daniels, Fairbolt, present.
Daniels, Fairbolt, present. Doubt. Doubt, St. Paul, present. Davids.
David, St. Paul, present.
David, St. Paul, present. Davney.
Davney, St. Paul, present.
Davney, St. Paul, present. Damuth.
Damuth, St. Paul, present.
Damuth, St. Paul, present. Detmer.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present.
Detmer, Forest Lake, present. Drazkowski.
Druskowski, Winona, present.
Drazkowski, Winona, present. Eklund.
Druskowski, Winona, present.
We got him, right? Yeah. Eklund.
Eklund, St. Paul, present.
Eklund, St. Paul, present. Edelson.
Edelson, Edina, present.
Edelson, Edina, present. Elkins.
Elkins, St. Paul, present.
Elkins, St. Paul, present. Erickson.
Erickson, St. Paul, present.
Erickson, St. Paul, present. Feist. Feist, St. Paul, present. Fisher.
Fisher, St. Paul, present.
Fisher, St. Paul, present. Frankie.
Frankie, St. Paul Park, present.
Frankie, St. Paul Park, present. Franzen. Franzen.
Branson, St. Paul, present.
Franzen, St. Paul, present. Frazier.
Frazier, New Hope, present.
Frazier, New Hope, present. Frederick.
Frederick, St. Paul, present.
Frederick, St. Paul, present. Freiberg.
Freiberg, New Hope, present.
Freiberg, New Hope, present. Garofalo. Garofalo. Gomez.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present.
Gomez, Minneapolis, present. Green.
Green, Foston, present.
Green, Foston, present. Greenman. Greenman, St. Paul, present. Grossel.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present.
Grossel, Clearbrook, present. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present.
Gruenhagen, Glencoe, present. Haley. Haley, St. Paul, present. Hamilton.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present.
Hamilton, St. Paul, present. Hanson R.
Hanson R., St. Paul, present.
Hanson R, St. Paul, present. Hanson J.
Hanson J. St. Paul, present.
Hanson J, St. Paul, present. Hassan, excused. Hausman.
Hausman, St. Paul, present.
Hausman, St. Paul, present. Heinrich.
Heinrich, Anoka, present.
Heinrich, Anoka, present. Heinzman.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present.
Heinzman.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present.
Heinzman, St. Paul, present. Her, St. Paul, present. Hertas.
Hertas from Greenfield, present.
Hertas, Greenfield, present. Hollins.
Collins, St. Paul, present.
Hollins, St. Paul, present. Hornstein.
Bornstein, Minneapolis, present.
Hornstein, Minneapolis, present. Howard.
Howard, Richfield, present.
Howard, Richfield, present. Hewitt.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present.
Hewitt, St. Paul, present. Igo. Igo, St. Paul, present. Johnson.
Johnson, St. Paul, present.
Johnson, St. Paul, present. Jordan.
Jordan, St. Paul, present.
Jordan, St. Paul, present. Jurgens.
Jurgens, St. Paul, present.
Jurgens, St. Paul, present. Keeler. Keeler, St. Paul, present. Keel.
Keel, St. Paul, present.
Keel, St. Paul, present. Cleavorn.
Cleveland, Plymouth, present.
Cleavorn, Plymouth, present. Cagle.
Cagle, St. Paul, present.
Cagle, St. Paul, present. Katiza-Watun.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present.
Katiza-Watun, Eden Prairie, present. Kosnick.
Osnick, Delano, present.
Kosnick, Delano, present. Creshaw.
Shaw, Little Falls, present.
Creshaw, Little Falls, present. Lee.
Lee, St. Paul, present.
Lee, St. Paul, present. Liebling.
Liebling, Rochester, present.
Liebling, Rochester, present. Lilly.
Lily, North St. Paul, present.
Lilly, North St. Paul, present. Lippert.
Lippert, Northfield, present.
Lippert, Northfield, present. Lislegard.
Lislegard, Aurora, present.
Lislegard, Aurora, present. Long.
Long, St. Paul, present.
Long, St. Paul, present. Lucero.
Lucero, Wright County, heading to Delano, present.
Lucero, Wright County, present. Lewick.
Lewick, St. Paul, present.
Lewick, St. Paul, present. Mariani.
Mariani, St. Paul, present.
Mariani, St. Paul, present. Markwart.
Markwart, Dilworth, present.
Markwart, Dilworth, present. Mason.
Mason, St. Paul, present.
Mason, St. Paul, present. McDonald.
McDonald, I was in Delano, but now I'm in St. Paul, present.
McDonald, St. Paul, present. Mecklin.
Macklin, Becker Township, present.
Mecklin, Becker Township, present. Miller. Miller, St. Paul, present. Moeller. Moeller, St. Paul, present. Moran.
Moran, St. Paul, present.
Moran, St. Paul, present. Morrison.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present.
Morrison, Deep Haven, present. Mortensen.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present.
Mortensen, St. Paul, present. Mueller. Mueller, St. Paul, present. Munson.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present.
Munson, Lincoln Township, present. Murphy.
Murphy, Hermantown, present.
Murphy, Hermantown, present. Nash.
Nash, Waconia, present.
Nash, Waconia, present. Nelson M.
Nelson M. Brooklyn Park, present.
Nelson M. Brooklyn Park, present. Nelson N.
Nelson N. Clover Township, present.
Nelson N. Clover Township, present. New Brindley. New Brindley, St. Paul, present. Noor. Noor, St. Paul, present. Novotny.
Devani Elk River, present.
Novotny, Elk River, present. O'Driscoll. O'Driscoll, St. Paul, present. Olson B.
Olson B. St. Paul, present.
Olson B. St. Paul, present. Olson L.
Olson L. Duluth, present.
Olson L. Duluth, present. O'Neill.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present.
O'Neill, Maple Lake, present. Pulowski.
Pulowski, Winona, present.
Pulowski, Winona, present. Petersburg.
Petersburg, Wasika, present.
Petersburg, Wasika, present. Farr.
Farr, LeSueur, present.
Farr, LeSueur, present. Pearson.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present.
Pearson, Rochester Township, present. Pinto.
Pinto, St. Paul, present.
Pinto, St. Paul, present. Poston.
Poston, Lakeshore, present.
Poston, Lakeshore, present. Pryor.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present.
Pryor, Minnetonka, present. Quam.
Quam, Byron, present.
Quam, Byron, present. Raleigh.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present.
Raleigh, St. Paul, present. Rasmussen. Rasmussen, St. Paul, present. Ryer. Ryer, St. Paul, present. Richardson.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present.
Richardson, Mendota Heights, present. Robbins. Robbins, St. Paul, present. Sandell.
Sandell, Woodbury, present.
Sandell, Woodbury, present. Sandsted.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present.
Sandsted, Hibbing, present. Schumacher.
Schumacher, Laverne, present.
Schumacher, Laverne, present. Schultz.
Schultz, Duluth, present.
Schultz, Duluth, present. Scott.
Scott, Andover, present.
Scott, Andover, present. Stephenson. Stephenson, St. Paul, present. Sundin.
Sundin, St. Paul, present.
Sundin, St. Paul, present. Swazinski.
Wazinski, Taunton, Minnesota, present.
Swazinski, Concord, Minnesota, present. Tice.
Tice, St. Paul, present.
Tice, St. Paul, present. Thompson. Thompson, St. Paul, present. Torkelson.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present.
Torkelson, St. Paul, present. Erdahl.
Erdahl, St. Paul, present.
Erdahl, St. Paul, present. Vang.
Vang, Minneapolis, present.
Minneapolis. Vang, Minneapolis, present. Waslewick.
Waslewick, St. Paul, present.
Waslewick, St. Paul, present. West.
West Blaine, present.
West Blaine, present. Winkler. Winkler, St. Paul, present. Wolgamott. Wolgamott, St. Paul, present. Zhang J.
Zhang J. St. Paul, present.
Zhang J. St. Paul, present. Zhang T.
Zhang T. Maplewood, present.
Zhang T. Maplewood, present. Joachim.
Joachim Hopkins, present.
Joachim Hopkins, present. Speaker Hartman. Speaker Hartman, St. Paul, present. Baker.
Baker, Wilmer, present.
Baker, Wilmer, present. Garofalo.
Garofalo from Farmington, present.
Garofalo, Farmington, present.
A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 92nd Session, 2021, 27th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, March 18th, 2021.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. No problem. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business is online. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House File.
Second reading House File number 108.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 717.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 903. Second reading House File 984.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1015.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1255.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 1913.
Second reading.
Second reading House File 2024. Second reading House File 2126.
Second reading.
And second reading House File 2245.
Second reading. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The Chief Clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction and first reading of House Files 2326 through 2368.
First reading House Files 2326 through 2368. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate files herewith transmitted. Senate file numbers 438, 628, 710, and 819. Message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate.
First reading of Senate files.
First reading of Senate File number 438, an act relating to education. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Education Policy. First reading Senate File number 628, an act relating to education. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Education Policy. First reading Senate File number 710, an act relating to education. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Education Finance. First reading Senate File number 819, an act relating to education. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Education Policy.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Winkler from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bill to be placed on the calendar for the day for Tuesday, March 23, 2021, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bill. House File number 1064.
Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 109. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 109, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Noor, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. It was the day before Thanksgiving. I still remember it vividly. As families across the country were gathered around their dining tables to give thanks and break bread. However, many families in my neighborhood were not sitting down for a holiday dinner. Instead, they were facing indescribable tragedy. On Wednesday, November 27, 2019, a fire broke out in a 25 high-rise housing building. That's just in my neighborhood in Minneapolis. I received numerous calls from my constituents about the fire. When I looked outside the window, members, I saw the smoke coming out of the building. I quickly rushed to the scene to see what was happening. Members, as I approached the building, I saw the first responders bringing down the bodies of the victims. We lost 5 precious lives on that day, and multiple people sustained injuries and the devastation of toxic smoke inhalation. I personally knew them. We lost Jerome Stewart. We lost Nadifa Mohamud. We lost Mariam Mohamud. We lost Amatullah Adam. We lost Tyler Scott Barron. And quite frankly, some of others who sustained injuries passed away after that. Members, we continue to mourn the loss of those lives with their families and friends. Our community lost so much on that day on fire during the November 27, 2019. But in the face of devastation, what I saw was the heroism of the brave firefighters who were ready to put their lives at risk to save lives, to protect the property. Members, this is a difficult moment, that today we don't have a law that requires all high-rise buildings to have sprinklers. As people were rushing out, the firefighters were climbing up the stairs with their heavy equipment. Can you imagine carrying all that equipment to the 14th floor or even 24th floor or even 25th floor of that building? They showed us how they deal with their job. And quite frankly, one of the firefighters was injured during that incident. With high winds, the window of the building that was on fire was breached. And the fire flames were going 15 feet high because of the high winds that were present on that day. Members, the smoke that was coming from the building that smelled like rubber, that toxic smell that swept the entire building, the heat that came with it, that impacted everyone. In fact, the firefighters had to wear smoke protection. Unfortunately, one of the victims, who was coming from the 24th floor, passed away on the 17th floor on the staircases. Madam Speaker and members, automatic fire sprinkler systems are an essential component of fire safety. In any given fire, you need three things. You need firefighters, you need fire alarm, and you need fire sprinklers. Today I'm asking you to make that possible for all the high-rise buildings. Members and Madam Speaker, we can do that, no matter whether you live in a new building or in an old building. Minnesotans deserve to feel secure in their homes. We can help ensure they do by preparing to avoid these tragic incidents that we could have done many years ago. The bill will require a high-rise building that are above 75 feet. That is 6 floors above, 7 floors starting for any building with human occupancy to require them to have sprinklers retrofitted. That's an opportunity for us to make a difference. And quite frankly, it's doable. We put some exceptions and exemptions in the bill to ensure that we can give people that allowance leverage. If they can meet the requirement by 2033, that is 12 years from now. 2033. Members, we can do it. This is a moment that is calling for us to act. This tragic event, according to the fire marshal, could have prevented by one fire sprinkler, one. Only one. The loss of life and the devastation that I saw requires us to act immediately. We have waited for far too long. In fact, same bill that I have today was passed in 1993 and also in 1994. In fact, the former Governor Annie Carlson himself said, we made a mistake and we need to correct that mistake. Today is the day that we correct that mistake and ensure that individuals have safety in their homes. And that's what we can do. I also want to thank the families and the community members who have encouraged me to continue fighting for fire sprinklers in their homes. I want to thank the Minnesota Fire Chiefs Association, the Minnesota Professional Firefighters, who are strongly supporting this bill. We've heard from the Minnesota Fire Marshal, Mr. Jim White, who came to testify, including the former fire chief for the state of Minnesota, Mr. Tom Brace. We've heard from the many victims. The moment is calling. It's now time for us to pass this common sense legislation in order to show that we value lives and we can protect property. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and members.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 109.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Yes. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would the bill author yield to a couple of questions, please?
He will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Noor, you were in the Commerce Committee a few weeks back talking about the bill, and we had some questions that you were unable to answer at that time, and you said that you were going to do some work on it, and so it's my hope that if I ask you these questions today, we can get some clarity, because I think my members would like to support the bill, but they do need clarification on a few of those points. One of the things that we had asked about was, is there a delineation between how many buildings were publicly owned and privately owned? If I'm not mistaken, there were somewhere around 90 buildings that were affected by this statewide. Can you maybe give us a little bit of a breakdown or a rundown of the publicly owned versus privately owned buildings that we're looking at, as well as, just to save some time, how many might be in Minneapolis or greater Minnesota? Just a little bit of demographic information on that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question about how many buildings that are impacted by this bill. In total, whether commercial or housing, is 69. Based on a survey that was done by the Minnesota Fire Marshal, I believe it's about 63 of those buildings are units that have human occupancy. With that, I can tell you that more than 23 of those buildings, predominantly public housing, are in Minneapolis. And most of them are within the area that I live. So if you look at the numbers, we're not including commercial buildings. They're not included in this bill. It's only if they have good human occupancy in those buildings. So with that total numbers that we have, we are certain these are buildings which the state and the federal funding that we have seen that is going through the system. In fact, the city of Minneapolis, on this building that we lost many of the lives, they have committed to put $1 million to retrofit the sprinklers in that one single building. The investment is taking place with or without this bill, but to ensure that we do have a requirement in our system that whether you live in an old building or a new building, you should have safety in your home. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the bill author would continue to yield.
He will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Noor, of the projects that we're talking about, 23 are public housing in the city of Minneapolis. Are the difference between 63 and so about 40 units, are those privately owned in greater Minnesota? Do you happen to have the breakdown on that? I'm just trying to figure out what the cost would be on this. And I'm also going to ask if you've identified a funding source to help some of those both publicly and privately owned facilities to be able to keep costs in check, the properties available, so that it doesn't become too cost prohibitive. So we have the owners wanting to close those facilities because they can't meet the needs to be able to do the retrofitting, and thus displacing a large number of people.
Representative Noor.
Representative O'Driscoll? Yes, we've looked into the numbers. As I've already told you, only 23 of those are in Minneapolis. And some of them are owned by nonprofit entities, and they're also in my district. Quite frankly, we've funded housing based on the housing infrastructure bond that we do through here at the state. There's a federal funding that is going on right now. There's a legislation that has been introduced at the federal level to support the sprinkler requirement for the public housing, and majority of them, once you take out the public housing, you're dealing with few housing. And with the data, I can assure you we haven't seen any. If anybody can tell me today any of those buildings are in their district in greater Minnesota, I'll appreciate that, but we have not seen. Most of these buildings are within the metro area, and that's why we are certain that we can do the work that is necessary and to help those buildings, starting with the city of Minneapolis, which actually gave $1 million for that building alone. So we are seeing the resources coming through. And I've heard from many of the members here that we have enough resources. We can afford to pay for that if we're willing to do so. So thank you so much for the question.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't plan on taking a lot of time this afternoon, but there is one other question. Because of the age of these buildings and the fact that they were not built with sprinkling systems is probably because they were constructed prior to the code going in place. And that may mean that some of those buildings are on the historic register or may be considered national treasures. Do you know how many of those buildings would be affected? And are they being exempted, or will those buildings have to accommodate and lose some of its original architectural feel and look as a result of the retrofit to be able to put the sprinkling systems in?
Representative O'Driscoll, are you asking Representative Noor to yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you.
He will yield.
Mr. Speaker, Representative O'Driscoll, yes, I think when you look at the exceptions that are included there, and quite frankly, we haven't seen any buildings that will be given that exception based on human occupancy. If they exist, that exception that in the law that we've included a list of exemptions will be looked into. And quite frankly, the extensions, if you're unable to meet the 12 years extension that we gave individuals, you can request another extension based on that reasonable process that you can bring to the state fire marshal and state that you cannot comply with this requirement. With all those exemptions and extensions included in this bill, I can assure you that we will be protecting lives. We'll make sure that everyone who lives in a high-rise building can live in safety, knowing that they can, they don't have to worry about a fire breaking out and losing lives.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Noor, I don't need you to comment on my final summation statement here. A couple things I hope do happen is, number one, that there's education for folks about the need to have smoke detectors and other alarm equipment in those facilities and the importance of not disabling or tampering with those devices, because those also do save lives, as do suppression systems, buying people a needed time to be able to get out of those facilities. Number two, it is my hope that we are able to find money to be able to help with this, because we do have a housing crisis right now. And the last thing I think we want to do is to displace more folks from housing that otherwise is quality housing stock to be able to have Minnesota residents live in. And Representative Noor, I want to extend again my sympathies to the people in your district who lost their lives as a result of this situation. Any loss of life is, in my book, tragic, and in something of this nature it is as well. And so, Mr. Speaker and Representative Noor, I am going to ask members to support your bill today in hopes that we are at the beginning of this process and that we can find some money to be able to relieve the burden for private owners as well as public owners and keep properties affordable and keep the housing stock available for people here in the state of Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Noor.
Representative Noor, closing comments to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll ask for all members to vote green on this bill. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, then the clerk will take the roll on the bill. All right. Members, for those voting remotely, please vote. We'll give folks a few more seconds here, and then we'll have the clerk call the names of those members who have not yet voted. Okay. Will the clerk please call the names of those members who have not yet voted?
Baker.
Baker votes aye.
Baker, aye. Carlson.
Carlson, aye.
Carlson, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, no.
Daniels, no. Davids.
David's aye.
Davids, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Grossel. Grossel.
Grossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, aye.
Gruenhagen, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich, no. Heinzman.
Heinzman, no.
Heinzman, no. Kresha.
Kresha, aye.
Kresha, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash.
Nash, no.
Nash, no. Nelson, M.
Insurance break.
Nelson, M.
M, aye.
Nelson, M. Aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Quam. Quam.
Quam voted with the finger
Okay.
print verification.
Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, no.
Swazinski, no. Vang.
Vang, aye.
Vang, aye.
The clerk will close the roll. Right. There being 103 ayes and 30 nays, the bill is passed in the title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for today is House File 844. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 844, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to consumer protection.
I recognize the author of the bill, Representative Stephenson. Will you please explain the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, last month we had an extreme weather event that occurred across the middle of the country. Record cold, ice, and snow hit Texas, Oklahoma, and most of the other states in the middle of the country. Due to deregulation, incompetent grid management, and impossibly poor planning by both public and private sector officials in Texas, hundreds of thousands of Americans went without power for days. Across Texas, there were reports of huge spikes in the prices of essential goods and services. Food, bottled water, and hotel rooms all surged in price, making a terrible situation even worse. Some hotels that still had power increased their prices to over $1,000 a night. The fact that people profited to an absurd extent, that they took advantage of the pain and the misery and the suffering of others in the moment of desperation, is morally bankrupt. Fortunately for Texans, their state has a law against price gouging in an emergency, and it's a tough one. Violators can face fines of up to $250,000. Investigations are ongoing, and law enforcement officials in the state are promising action. 35 other states have laws against price gouging during a disaster. Minnesota, by contrast, has no such law. And our citizens would be without recourse if something like what happened in Texas were to happen here. This bill would change that. It would make it illegal to price gouge during a disaster declared by the governor. It would fine people who do price gouge and allow restitution for the victims. It also establishes clear expectations for what is permissible and what is impermissible pricing behavior during an emergency. Businesses won't be left wondering what they can and can't do. Some people watching this debate from home might be a little surprised to learn that Minnesota doesn't have a law against price gouging during an emergency. In particular, I'm sure some people are thinking back to the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic when the price of toilet paper and other essentials rose to heights. But in fact, this is an example of how Governor Walz used his executive authority under Chapter 12 to respond to the pandemic and protect Minnesotans. Executive Order 2010 prohibited selling essential goods and services for an unconscionably excessive price. After implementation of Executive Order 2010, the Attorney General's office entered into 100 informal resolutions and 6 court-filed settlements stopping price gouging and recovering restitution. I'm glad that the Governor and the Attorney General were able to use the authority vested in them through the operation of Chapter 12 to protect Minnesotans. But I also take seriously the criticisms of my friends on the other side of the aisle that we here in the legislature should be doing the hard work of policymaking, that we should be seeking to review and revise the governor's executive orders. So in the Commerce Committee, we took a hard look at Executive Order 2010. I talked to my fellow committee members and stakeholders about what worked well and what could have gone better. In particular, I had long and extensive conversations with the Minnesota Retailers Association about how we could put together a price gouging law that protects both Minnesota consumers and works for businesses. And I'm pleased to tell the body that the retailers support the bill that's before you today. You know, one thing I love about living in Minnesota is that when disaster strikes, we really take care of each other. It never fails. Whether it's as simple as helping a stranger out of a ditch after a bad snowstorm, or the people in my district who made hand-sewed face masks for healthcare workers when we had PPE shortages last spring, Minnesota is full of good people with big hearts. And that extends to our business community. I really believe that the vast majority of businesses in Minnesota would never engage in this kind of behavior. They want to be, and in fact are, good members of our community. But the fact that few people in Minnesota would price gouge doesn't mean that there shouldn't be accountability for those that do. This bill is about ensuring that accountability. It's about protecting Minnesotans when they are most vulnerable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 844.
Third reading. The representative from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And, you know, as minority lead on the Judiciary and Civil Law Committee, we've heard close to probably a dozen bills in our committee this year that have to do with civil penalties. But this bill we did not see. And in Subdivision 3, there's an entire section in this bill that deals with civil penalties that would be assessed to businesses for violation of this bill should it become law. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, nothing against the bill or the bill's author, but this bill skipped a committee. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move that this bill be re-referred to the Judiciary and Civil Law Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Scott recommends that the bill be re-referred to, didn't catch what she said. Committee on Judiciary.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Scott.
I would like to request a roll call on that. Thank you.
A roll call has been requested. Members, a roll call has been requested. I do see 15 hands. There will be a roll call. Yeah, actually got 15 hands in the chamber. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none?
Repeat the question.
Yes. Scott has moved that House File 844 be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary and
Finance and Civil Law.
Finance and Civil Law. Well, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And To the motion, I would just say that this is our relatively run-of-the-mill civil penalty piece, and we did review it, and I had declined to have this come to my committee, and so would encourage members to vote no.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Speaker?
Yes, please identify yourself.
Representative Scott?
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I suppose you could classify some of the other bills that came to our committee for this same reason as run-of-the-mill civil law or civil penalties. And so, members, I encourage a yes vote on this. Let's follow the process. Thank you, Madam Speaker, or Mr. Speaker.
Ready? Okay, the clerk will take the roll.
Somehow I got questions coming from all over.
I know. Members, please vote. In a few seconds, we'll have the clerk call the names of those members who haven't voted yet. Okay, the clerk will call the names of all those members who haven't voted yet.
Bonner.
Bonner votes no.
Bonner, no. Baker.
Baker votes aye.
Baker, aye. Carlson.
No.
Carlson, no. Daniels.
Daniels votes aye.
Daniels, aye. Davids.
David's aye.
Davids, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, no.
Gomez, no. Grossel.
Russell, aye.
Grossel, aye. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, aye.
Gruenhagen, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hausman.
Hausman, no.
Hausman, no. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Heinzman, aye.
Heinzman, aye. Kresha.
Grisha, aye.
Kresha, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, no.
Mariani, no. Mason. Mason. Murphy.
Murphy, no.
Murphy, no. Nash.
Nash, aye.
Nash, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, no.
Pinto, no. Pryor.
Pryor, no.
Pryor, no. Sundin.
Sundin, no.
Sundin, no. Swazinski. Swazinski. Vang.
Swazinski, aye.
Vang, no.
Vang.
Vang, no.
Vang, no. Mason.
Mason, no.
Mason, no. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye.
Kosnick changes from no to aye.
Kosnick changes from no to aye.
Clerk will close the roll. By a vote of 63 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The representative from Otter Tail, Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want members to know that the bill before the House today is opposed by the Minnesota Grocers Association and is opposed by the grocers for good reason. From day one of the pandemic, our grocers stayed open. They worked around the clock to bring food and essential goods to our communities. They made investments in plexiglass shields for cashiers and undertook new cleaning protocols for customers and employees. They reserved special hours for seniors so that our seniors could shop safely. Due to supply chain issues and increased demand, our grocers faced empty shelves and a shortage of key goods. Grocers worked hard with their distributors and their suppliers to get their customers access to these key goods. Sometimes the cost of the goods increased due to increased costs further down the supply chain, or having to switch to a new supplier or a new brand. This was not price gouging, but a simple economic reality. In the district I represent, the grocers' customers are not simply customers, but are also neighbors and friends. They did not price gouge their neighbors and friends. A year ago yesterday, Executive Order 2010 was issued, which gave the Attorney General's office the power to investigate and prosecute price gouging complaints. The Attorney General launched a media campaign to solicit these complaints. Over the last year, the Attorney General received about 2,400 complaints. Let's put that number into context. There are more than 4.3 million adults in Minnesota. According to the Federal Reserve, the average U.S. consumer has about 70 transactions per month. Over the course of 12 months, that is about 3.6 billion transactions by Minnesotans, many of which were for essential items covered by this executive order. Out of billions of transactions, the Attorney General got 2,400 complaints of price gouging this last year. After investigating each of those 2,400 complaints, the Attorney General's office took formal court action in 6 cases. Let me repeat that. Out of billions of transactions this last year, during an unprecedented pandemic, the Attorney General took formal court action in only 6 cases. While the number of complaints was relatively minuscule, it still created serious operational burdens on our grocers. In response to the Attorney General's investigations, they were tasked with providing over 6 weeks of invoices to prove that they were not price gouging in the middle of this crisis, as they worked to stay open and get their customers the goods they needed. Several of the Attorney General's complaints brought the Attorney General's office all the way back to the farm. These investigations involved an exhaustive amount of paperwork and man-hours. The Grocers Association testified that small family-owned rural stores and ethnic markets were hit hardest by these investigations. They don't have corporate legal departments or sophisticated inventory systems to respond to AG complaints. In addition, the bill before you would set a cutoff for price gouging at 30%. If a retailer increased the price of toilet paper by 31%, they could face a fine of up to $1,000 per transaction. If a hotel increased the price of a hotel room from $100 per night to $131 per night, they could face fines. These changes in prices could simply reflect changes in week-to-week pricing strategy, not a price gouging scheme. In addition, the natural gas and energy price spikes that we have realized and that were mentioned can and are already being investigated by state and federal authorities. Minnesota's Public Utility Commission is investigating, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is also investigating. We do not need a new law to investigate price manipulation in our energy markets. While the bill author has said that the Retail Association is in favor of this bill, I think it is important to be clear that this isn't something that the retailers asked for. It wasn't on their session priorities. This is a situation where an organization says they're neutral or supportive because the law could have been worse. The grocers who sell mainly essential goods are still opposed. Members, rarely do we get to try out a law before passing it. Thanks to Executive Order 2010, we have tried a price gouging law for the last year. What have we learned? We've learned that out of billions of transactions, the Attorney General took formal court action in only 6 cases. We've learned from the Grocers Association that these largely unnecessary investigations created an undue burden on our family-owned stores and ethnic markets. We learned that price gouging laws make for a good press release, but don't actually help Minnesotans. Members, I ask you to vote no on this bill. We should be sending all of our grocers a thank you note after this last year, not an unnecessary policy our Main Street retailers can't afford. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The representative from Wright, Representative Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise to oppose this terrible feel-good bill. Back in 2001, I was driving a truck. And we all remember 9/11, when Islamic terrorists hijacked airplanes and flew them into the towers in New York. That created a panic across the nation in many industries. One of them was in gasoline. And that night when I was working, driving my truck around the metro, I went from gas station to gas station where I witnessed the average price of gasoline back then, September of 2001, in the neighborhood of $1.60 a gallon, double and triple in a matter of hours. One of my stops just so happened to be at the Holiday gas station store just down the road from the Capitol. And I remember very vividly that night trying to get into the gas station, but the line was many blocks long, and it took a long time for me waiting the line to get into the gas station. Why? Because people were panicked at what the immediate future would hold. And in response, retailers, in this case, gas station owners, increased their price. And they did so in response to market forces, the age-old reality of supply and demand. They didn't do so because they were trying to price gouge. They didn't do so because they were immoral. They didn't do so because they were greedy. They did so because of the reality that a crisis was happening and they needed to respond. If they did not increase prices, what would happen is supply would run out much faster. When supply runs out quickly, then nobody is able to get anything, and that's regardless of the supply. This is a terrible bill. It doesn't recognize reality. We should not allow the Attorney General to go after and persecute small business owners who are simply responding to reality. Another example I can think of off the top of my head, unexpected, unanticipated laws of supply and demand. Over this weekend, I read an article that, well, I'm sure all of us or many of us have seen the articles coming out of the abysmal failure of the Biden administration, the crisis happening on our border. And I have an article here in front of me that the Biden administration is spending $86 million on hotel rooms for illegal families. I saw another article this weekend that says that the Biden administration is considering flying those illegal aliens to states near the Canadian border. Well, guess where that is? That's Minnesota. So we might see a spike in the demand, if this actually happens, for hotel rooms. Now, the laws of supply and demand, if the prices have to go up in response to the Biden administration complete and utter abysmal failure, having to spend taxpayer dollars to house illegal aliens up here in Minnesota, having flown them from the South. That isn't going to be the result of immoral price gouging, trying to hurt others. It's going to be, again, in response to the age-old reality of supply and demand. We need to recognize this reality. And as I read the bill language here, abnormal market disruption, essential consumer good and service. Well, in my first example, gasoline would certainly be considered an essential consumer good or service. And abnormal market disruption, well, I think we would consider terrorists, Islamic terrorists, hijacking airplanes, slamming into buildings to be an abnormal market disruption. When I see here a seller, well, the seller is most certainly our retailers or gas stations. Unconscionably excessive. Well, the price of doubling and tripling. So gasoline, I remember that night between $3 and, if I recall correctly, I saw it upwards of $6. I think that was in Forest Lake. The Forest Lake Holiday gas station store back then. What would that be? That's 20 years ago now. 20 years ago, there were, and Representative Detmer might remember this, there were 2 Holiday gas station stores right across the street from each other. And that one, I think, was $6. Members, we certainly do not want, again, an attorney general to go after those to abuse authority and to persecute our retailers for the reality of what's happening in a crisis. And again, the takeaway is, in the law of supply and demand, if the market is unable to raise the price in a response to an increased demand when there is a finite supply, that will only result in exhausting the supply faster, with the consequence that consumers will be left with nothing. Members, please vote no to this bill. Thank you.
The representative from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Representative Stephenson's bill today. And Representative Stephenson mentioned the recent weather patterns that we saw over the President's Day weekend, the remarkably cold polar vortex and some of the impacts that those had. It also had an extreme impact in natural gas prices across the country, and including in Minnesota. We saw them spike to a level that we really haven't seen in decades. And we're learning now that this is going to result in a really staggering impact to ratepayers of between $250 and $500 per household. We heard in our committee testimony from the New Ulm Municipal Utility that their costs in January for their natural gas bills were $700,000. And in February, their bill was over $7 million. So a really extraordinary impact on the price of our communities. In Two Harbors, residents have already seen $500 increases to their bills. And we don't know yet whether or not there was price gouging involved in this situation, but Senator Tina Smith has called for a federal investigation into price gouging from this incident. And I was happy to sign on to a letter from Representative Stephenson in support of these actions from Senator Tina Smith. It was mentioned just a couple of speakers ago that there are investigations going into this price gouging, and that's true. But we had Attorney General Ellison in front of the Climate and Energy Committee testify that the bill that Representative Stephenson is authoring today would have been very useful authority for this particular circumstance if he had had this authority in place to be able to investigate potential price gouging related to these incredible spikes in natural gas prices. So we know that there are problems that come up, and we know that there are actors who try to take advantage of those problems to the detriment of Minnesotans and to the detriment of Minnesota consumers. And having laws like the ones that Representative Stephenson has introduced today could protect consumers from some of the severe price shocks that we are seeing from natural gas bills that are happening this month and will continue to happen throughout this year. So I want to thank Representative Stephenson for authoring this bill, and I'm proud to support it today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The representative from Sherborne, Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author rise for a question?
He will yield.
Thank you. My question in two parts. How arbitrary is the investigations into these complaints going to be? In the second part, would this apply to airline tickets?
Representative Stephenson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Novotny, that was actually a major component of what we were looking to do by codifying this law, is giving some security to businesses, some real guideposts to what they can and can't do during an emergency in several different ways. And so there's guideposts around when exactly these rules come into effect. And there is a safe harbor in place that shows that if you're under 30% of an increase, that's the number that Representative Rasmussen was referring to, that 30% increase creates a safe harbor. If you're within that 30%, it's not price gouging. If you're above 30%, that doesn't mean it's price gouging. It's not a black and white line, below yes, or below no, above yes. That safe harbor, when you get above that, then we have to go and look and see, is this price gouging? Is it caused perhaps by supply chain issues, as was discussed, in which case it's not price gouging. So it is not an arbitrary factor at all. In fact, we've created a structure here to protect businesses, and that was a big part of the discussion that we had with the retailers and others. As to your question about airline tickets, I do note that the bill does, under Section 1, Subdivision 1, C on line 1.15, essential consumer good or service means a good or service vital and necessary for the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And then there's an including without limitation here. So I do see transportation is listed on that list. So I would say very potentially yes.
Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That'll be all.
The representative from Traverse County, Representative Becker.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, members, thank you very much. This bill really should be renamed the bill that would eliminate supply. There's several on the House floor that does not remember in 1973 when we had oil in a situation where our prices, gas prices went the supply went low because the gas prices were capped. As a small business owner, the challenge that this bill has is it assumes small business owners are bad actors. If you're an owner of a convenience store, you buy supply. You do not control the price of those goods. And all this will do is eliminate supply because supply demand will determine what the price will be. We heard earlier on the floor how many small businesses work so hard to find ways to lower prices. And that's the problem with this bill. We would have then an attorney general who has no idea how to run a small business, how to keep customers happy, controlling and going out and saying, hey, you did something wrong. We saw that earlier this year with what happened with our attorney general going after small businesses, restaurants and stuff quite wrongfully. And all this does is gives way too much power for one office to go after small businesses wrongly. And then because of their lack of expertise, an office will be saying, hey, this is too much, this isn't right. So at the end of the day, we're going to eliminate supply, which will cause additional hardship. And again, I just cannot support a bill that makes an assumption that small businesses are the bad actors, which they don't control all the variables of that product that comes into their hands that they sell. So, Speaker and members, I would ask you to not support this bill that would eliminate supply when supply is most needed. Thank you, members.
Any further discussion to the bill? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, one of the things that we know that emergency situations or pandemics or other unknowns drive, and that is fear. And what fear drives is panic. And what panic drives is people wanting to get back to the basic instincts of taking care of themselves and taking care of their families. Having come from a family that's been very actively involved in law enforcement and public safety over the years, I think back to the community that I grew up in and the times that we had some situations that had occurred where we didn't expect bad weather, we didn't expect tornadoes, we didn't expect a mill to blow up on Memorial Day and take lives. We didn't expect any of these kinds of things. But what we knew is that the first and foremost we had to do was to take care of ourselves and take care of our neighbors, take care of the people in the community. What I fear is that if an owner of a convenience store raises their gas prices in a way to try to conserve the amount of fuel that's available in a community because of some disaster that you do not know about, do not know the extent of, you could actually be compromising the community at large. Now, I know some of you have actually gone back to your technology devices and are kind of clicking away on it, and that's fine. That happens in the chamber. I get that. I understand that. But I also want you to understand that this is an important bill that you're about to ask all businesses to be subject to. No differentiation. It's a 30% price increase within a 6-month period of time. If a fire truck can't get to a fire because it doesn't have fuel, if an emergency vehicle can't get to the scene to take care of people who have had a heart attack to transport them to a hospital, or other public safety related issues are not able to be resolved, what have we accomplished? What have we accomplished with price increases? Or having to worry about, gee, if prices go up, is this going to be considered gouging? Supply and demand chains get affected every day by market forces. If you've watched, the price of crude oil has come down about $5 a barrel in the last 3 trading days. Now, there may be a few of us wonky people in this chamber that watch that kind of stuff, and I'm one of them. Why? Why did they go up? Because we had to idle a number of wells and a number of refineries. Why? Because of where the supply was based on demand. And as a result of that, prices went up when it looked like there was going to be an increase in demand, the economy was going to be moving. As soon as we saw that it was a false start at this point, what did we do? We stepped back, and what did we do? We saw prices fall. Now, if something costs $1 and it goes up to $1.35, that would actually fit within the parameters of the bill that Representative Stephenson is bringing forward. Anyone who's involved in the supply chain for housing knows that there is a national shortage right now for roof sheathing, for 2x4s, for other products and materials. As a matter of fact, this weekend I was just visiting with a couple of my friends who are buyers for major companies. They said we are seeing some price increases coming through the supply chain. Why? Because of the inability to be able to get the amount of product that is needed and demanded in the marketplace. Another supply issue. Many of you probably have heard that auto manufacturers are idling their plants. Why? Because of a shortage of chips. Again, supply and demand has a large impact on what happens. As I started out, fear of the unknown drives panic. Panic drives people back to their basic instincts of survival. Out of 2,400 cases that were reported to the Attorney General under Executive Order 2010, resulted in 6 court actions. This bill operates from a premise, members, that you are guilty until proven innocent, that you do not have any kind of a relationship with your customers other than to take full advantage of them, get while the getting is good, and that there would never ever be a sense of repeat business or doing the right thing in your community. Remember, these are the businesses that are the first ones to step up to sponsor your children's ball teams, your ball clubs, first one to be able to donate to the raffle for the fundraiser in the community. I don't believe that that's what the businesses are trying to do. Members, please vote no. This is a bill that has a problem looking for a solution. No, it's the solution looking for a problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The representative from Hennepin, Representative Katiza-Wattoon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I wanted to respond to a couple of the comments that I had heard throughout this debate. I don't think that the assumption here is that businesses are bad actors and that are looking to take advantage of Minnesotans. In fact, I think that the intention of the bill is the exact opposite. Like Chair Stephenson mentioned, the vast majority of Minnesotan business owners are in business to help people, to help their neighbors, to help their community members. Like Representative O'Driscoll was just speaking to sponsor those ball teams, to participate in community events and all of that. But all this does is put in parameters for those few bad actors who are going to take advantage of a situation when Minnesotans are suffering and try to make a quick buck. And I think it just makes a lot of sense to have this in place so that if something were to happen, like just recently happened in Texas, Minnesotans are protected all across the state. And the business owners who are doing the right thing and aren't trying to take advantage of anyone, they're not going to be impacted by this bill. So I urge you to support the bill to take care of Minnesotans everywhere. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the bill? Any further discussion? To the bill author then, Representative Stephenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This has been an interesting, if at times very unfortunate and distressing debate. I did want to clear up a few misconceptions. The first and most important is, I think, to what Representative Katiza-Wattoon was just saying. There's no presumption in this bill that all businesses are bad or that you're guilty until proven innocent. As a prosecutor, I know a thing or two about that. That's not the case at all. And just because something is rare doesn't mean that we shouldn't address it. I see my good friend Representative Wolgamott on the floor today, who's a realtor, and we know that the overwhelming majority of realtors in Minnesota are good people trying to help neighbors find homes. But we do have protections in law for realtors that abuse their position, that violate their fiduciary duties. We do hold those realtors accountable because it's the right thing to do to hold people accountable when they abuse their power. And if a retailer or a grocer or anyone else is going to take advantage of Minnesotans during a moment of crisis to profit, then there should be accountability for that. There was a lot of discussion today about supply chain issues, which I find really unfortunate because the bill in plain black and white says that if the price discrepancy is caused by a supply issue, it's not price gouging. And in fact, that's an important piece about the bill that gives security to our retailers, not creates liability. So in the situation where there is a change in the supply that causes the price to go up, that's not price gouging. It's in black and white in the bill. There was also a lot of talk about how there was a burden on merchants, on retailers, an undue burden of investigations. And, you know, a couple of points here. One is that I would say that 35 states figured out a way to do this in a way that didn't cause the market to come crashing down, that businesses could accept. And frankly, our model here is very reasonable compared to some other ones. But the real issue here, the real burden we should be focusing on are the families who are trying to survive these crises, who are trying to put food on the table, provide clean water, have a warm place to sleep. What's the burden on them? That's the burden that this chamber should be thinking about. And the last thing I want to say is this. I'm really distressed by the constant discussion about empty shelves, about prices as a way to regulate supply in a crisis. Because it implies that people with means have greater right to those essential goods and services than people without. Whether your family has a warm place to sleep during a polar vortex shouldn't depend on the balance in your checkbook. It shouldn't depend on whether you're a millionaire or a pauper. You should be able to provide for your family in Minnesota, whether you have clean water for them to drink, food for them to eat. It shouldn't depend on how rich you are. There are other ways to take care of supply in a crisis than price. Members, this is a common sense idea. It's wrong to take advantage of people when they're desperate. Everyone can understand that. That's what this bill is about. And that's why I'm asking for your green vote.
The clerk will take the roll. Once again, your friendly reminder for those members that are voting remotely, please vote. Please vote. Okay. Will the clerk please call the names of all those members who haven't voted yet?
Baker.
Baker, no.
Baker, no. Carlson.
Carlson, yes.
Carlson, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, no.
Daniels, no. Davids.
Davids, no.
Davids, no. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Grossel.
Russell, no.
Grossel, no. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, no.
Gruenhagen, no. Hamilton.
Hamilton, no.
Hamilton, no. Hausman.
Hausman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, no.
Heinrich, no. Heinzman.
Heisman, no.
Heinzman, no. Cleavorn.
Claiborne, aye.
Cleavorn, aye. Creshaw.
Grisha, no.
Creshaw, no. Mariani. Mariani, aye. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash.
Nash, no.
Nash, no. Pearson.
Pearson, no.
Pearson, no. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Sundin. Sundin. Swazinski.
Zinski, no.
Swazinski, no. Vang.
Vang, aye.
Vang, aye. Sundin. Okay. Sundin. Sundin votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 71 ayes and 62 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The third bill on the calendar for today is House File 310. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 310, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to child protection, the first engrossment.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Mortensen moves to amend Senate File Number 310, the first engrossment. The amendment is coded A2.
Representative Winkler, for what purpose do you rise?
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
State your point of order.
Madam Speaker, under Rule 3.21 of the House Permanent Rules, motions and propositions must be germane. The Mortensen Amendment, the A2, introduces an entirely new section of statute. It also deals with an unrelated topic, which is presumption of parenting, and this is a bill related to mandatory reporting. There's no subject matter overlap and no statutory overlap. I'd ask you to find the point of order well taken.
I find the point of order well taken. The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn, to your bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a Minnesota kid, I remember vividly the warnings and trainings we all had about strangers and kidnappers, and we all lived in the shadow of Jacob Wetterling's disappearance. And I remember being taught so much about stranger danger and to never go anywhere with someone I didn't know. And the fear was really framed around a stranger, someone we don't know. Despite all these things being seared into our memories and our brains, the reality is that most children who suffer abuse are more likely to be harmed by someone they do know. Maybe a family member, a neighbor, someone in that circle of trust, and we have many, many examples. The example that instigated this bill today was the USA Gymnastics scandal. And first I want to note that although we use the shorthand of the USA Gymnastics scandal, there were 332 known victims of Dr. Larry Nassar. 332 women and girls harmed, 332 families carrying that trauma, entire communities impacted. And how did this happen? How was the abuse like this allowed to flourish systematically for decades? Because others allowed it to happen. As I learned more about what happened to Maggie Nichols and all the other girls victimized, I wondered how, when some of these girls were brave enough to speak up, the abuse still continued. Isn't that why we have things like mandated reporting statutes? Why did it take journalists digging into it and lifting up those voices for the abuse to finally stop? And like most parents, my next thought was, how do I keep my kids safe? And how do I keep everybody else's kids safe? And I thought about the adults in their lives and how we need to be able to trust those other adults. That's how our kids grow, and that's how they become members of our community. My kids play club soccer, and like many kids, they adore their coaches, and they often listen to their coaches better than they listen to the other adults in their lives. But our current mandating reporting law does not extend to coaches outside of school sports. It does not extend to church staff other than clergy. It does not extend to scouts or parks and rec teams. It is limited to schools and childcare as well as clergy and therapists. And after this bill was introduced, a young adult I already knew reached out to me to share how this issue had impacted their life directly and how things would have been better if this bill had already been in place at the time of the abuse. And then we continued to hear from other victims and how important this bill is to all of them, and this bill became much, much bigger than me or any one single person. Finally, if you are someone who is held in esteem and respected by children, that is truly an honor to hold. And as this bill has moved forward, I've heard from a lot of these folks. Members, I sent you an email with a list of the many organizations and individuals who have sent written support, including many churches and people of faith. I've also heard from many baseball and soccer coaches and others who care deeply about this issue and the need to make sure our kids are protected. I would like to thank all of the co-authors of this bill. This is one of those bills that was easy to get to 35 authors, and an incredibly important bipartisan, really truly nonpartisan effort to move this forward. Members, I ask for your support.
There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 310.
Third reading. The member from Ramsey, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to speak on this House File 310, and thank you to Representative Becker-Finn for bringing this bill forward to help protect our youth. I too was surprised when I first heard that we still did not have a bill and ordinance out there, a statute, that would help protect youth who were in vulnerable situations, that we did not have youth in organized sports and organized activities being protected. The folks working there were not mandated reporters. And they were not required when a problem of maltreatment came forward to do anything about this. It is important that when youth or anyone brings something forward that consists of maltreatment or sexual abuse of youth in an organization, that organization should be turning that information over to the professionals for the professionals to do an unbiased investigation to help determine what happened. Because what happens too often, what can happen otherwise, is that a youth can make an allegation and present an issue of abuse, and the organization can decide, oh, that's just a youth, they don't know what they're talking about, and in turn protect the person who did the abuse. And so what happens is the tables are turned. The youth who had the courage to come forward and say, I think there's something wrong, or the person advocating for the youth, they end up being turned into the people causing the problem, and the perpetrator ends up becoming the victim because you don't have professionals investigating the situation. And this is where it's very important to make sure that we have all organizations being covered, because the impact to youth that in these kind of situations is very devastating. They're left to second guess themselves, geez, do I really not understand what's happening? It can lead to depression. It can lead to suicidal thoughts. It can lead to them questioning of how society actually works. And I think it is very important that we have this bill to help protect the youth in these types of situations. And I want to say thank you for not only the organizations that came forward, but also the youth who had the courage to come forward and say, yes, this happened to me, and being willing to share those stories to let us know that, yes, this is a problem, and that if we don't do something about it, it could happen to somebody else. So I encourage everyone to vote green on this bill. Thank you.
The member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I am pleased to rise
I wasn't on mute there.
in support of House File 310 today. And I'll tell you why. For 17 years of my life, I was an abused child. It was not an uncommon occurrence to be beaten with a baseball bat, broom handles, fists. I was often kicked by my father. And it led to a great many hospital visits that were always explained away as, well, Jim fell. And as I dug through it later in life, I found out that my mother knew, and she allowed it to persist. Also, as I dug through, I found that a good number of my old coaches and day camp leaders and other camp leaders, sports camps, that they knew, but they didn't have any way to let it be known because they weren't mandatory reporters. And I'm 53 years old now, and I'm still dealing with this. And I will tell you that had this been in place, that many of the people who now later in my life came to me and said, Jim, we knew what was going on. We had no way to help you. And I will tell you, members, there were a lot of nights that I would pray for someone to come and save me, and no one came. And when you find out later that your mom knew, and mom was a mandatory reporter as the director of nursing, that made it a little bit worse. And I would ask for your unanimous vote on this so that other kids don't have to go through what I went through and won't have to go through some of the things that you've heard about here, because the more we can expand the number of people who can accurately and responsibly be mandatory reporters, we're going to save a lot of heartache, we're going to save a lot of damage in life, and we're going to make it so that people don't have to go through the same things that I went through for 17 years. And I will end there, but I'd appreciate your green vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
First, I want to thank Representative Nash for sharing that with all of us. As I have reminded my committee and testifiers, vulnerability is not weakness. And it takes a lot of strength to share that story, and I think it will make a difference. As elected officials, we often reflect on what an honor it is to represent our communities. And we talk about how we could introduce legislation, but when it comes to issues like this, I think that it is a moral obligation that we have to act. When you know of something like this happening, it is on us to do something about it. And so even if you learn about that while sitting on your couch watching a Netflix documentary, while texting Representative Moeller, you still need to take action, and that is what we're doing today. I could not have imagined last summer when I was texting Representative Moeller all the stories that would then be shared with me and others, and how important this bill is. So thank you again to Representative Nash and others who have stood up in support. This will make a difference, and I chimigwich for your support.
The clerk will take the roll on the bill. Members, please vote. Will the chief clerk call the names of those who have not voted yet?
Baker.
Baker, aye.
Baker, aye. Carlson. Carlson, aye. Daniels.
Daniels, aye.
Daniels, aye. Davids.
David's aye.
Davids, aye. Gomez.
Gomez, aye.
Gomez, aye. Grossel. Grossel.
Grossel, aye.
Grossel, aye. Gruenhagen.
Gruenhagen, aye.
Gruenhagen, aye. Hamilton.
Hamilton, aye.
Hamilton, aye. Hausman.
Houseman, aye.
Hausman, aye. Heinrich.
Heinrich, aye.
Heinrich, aye. Heinzman.
Aye.
Heinzman, aye. Kreshaw.
Grisha, aye.
Kreshaw, aye. Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Mason.
Mason, aye.
Mason, aye. Murphy.
Murphy, aye.
Murphy, aye. Nash.
Nash, aye.
Nash, aye. Pearson.
Pearson, aye.
Pearson, aye. Pinto.
Pinto, aye.
Pinto, aye. Pryor.
Pryor, aye.
Pryor, aye. Sundin.
Aye.
Sundin, aye. Swazinski.
Swazinski, aye.
Swazinski, aye. Vang.
Vang, aye.
Vang, aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 130 ayes and 3 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there's no objection, we'll take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Thompson moves that House File Number 1103 be recalled from the Committee on Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law and be re-referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice Reform, Finance, and Policy.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Thompson, to your motion.
Simple request, this bill be removed from one committee to the next. It's a simple request.
Representative Thompson, can you briefly describe the bill?
It's a bill in public safety. It's public safety, yes, the qualified immunity bill.
Any discussion to the Thompson motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails.
Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 4, the Senate Concurrent Resolution relating to adjournment for more than 3 days. Winkler moves that the Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 4 be now adopted.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, members, I ask for your support for this motion. It allows us to have a Easter Passover break from the action.
Any discussion to the Winkler motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Announcements. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021.
Representative Winkler moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. Representative Winkler.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Winkler moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021.